Hello, my name is Rickard, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to recreate the teaser poster for the movie Aladdin. So I bought this lamp from Amazon. It cost me about $9. I took a photo of it, and we're going to use that to recreate the Aladdin poster. We're also using some free stock images, as well as some texture layers, grunge layers, and some particles. So if you want all the assets that I used in this tutorial, go ahead. I do have a link to all of them in the description. And if you want to follow along, I do suggest pause the video, download that now, and then carry on with the tutorial. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start by going to File, New, and we're going to change this to Poster, and we're going to change the inches to pixels. We're going to do 2000 pixels by 3000 pixels. Resolution we can keep the same. We want it RGB 8-bit, and I want my background to be black. So let's hit Create. Next, I'm going to add some guides. So I'm going to go to View, New Guide Layout, and this is what you're going to see. That's the default view. We're going to change the columns to 4, get rid of the gutter, and change the rows to 8. Get rid of the gutter there as well. And that's going to help us lay out things and determine where things are. To turn off the guides, the shortcut for that is Command Column. You can see that here. That's a good one to know because we will use it just so that we can see what our image looks like without all those guides on top. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is add a kind of background colors to this just to kind of give us a base plate to start with. So let's make a new layer here by clicking on the new layer icon. I'm going to go in the gradient tool and go from the linear gradient to the radial gradient and make sure that I have foreground to transparent as my gradients here. And you can see that foreground to transparent. And then for my foreground color, I am going to pick 2A016B. So that's a dark purple color there. And make sure my opacity is 100%. And I'm just going to go from the center here, click, drag, holding down Shift to the edge. And you'll see that'll make my my gradient. It's kind of like a ball in the middle. And to zoom out, by the way, I'm holding down Command and the space bar, and then I can drag left and right to zoom in and out. So I'm going to zoom out here so I can see more of my pasteboard. And I'm going to do Command T, which is free transform, Command T. This is also another shortcut you're going to use all the time. So learn that one, Command T. And I'm just going to grab one of these edges, hold down Option, and stretch this so that it's covering the whole background there. And I do want it to be a little bit stronger at the bottom here. At the same time, I want it to go all the way to the top, so I'm seeing it up there. And let's hit OK. Next, we're going to make another gradient, and this time I'm going to use more of a kind of light violet color. We're going to do 8848 DC. You can see that color there. Let's hit OK. And again, start from the middle, hold down Shift so that we have a ball there, and then Command T for transform. This time I'm going to just kind of drag this down so that the center is right about there. And maybe drag it out a little bit like this. And that's pretty nice. All right, the next thing I want to do is make a new layer here, and I'm going to call this Painted. And what we're going to do is kind of break up this background using a brush. So let's do Command 0 to fill our screen. I'm going to do Command semicolon to turn off those guides. Then I'm going to go to my brushes. I'm going to go to the Nuclei watercolor brushes here and just pick one that has a little bit of gradation to it, you know, so you can see right there it's higher opacity than here, and also somewhat roundish. So I like this one right here. I'm going to go to my brush presets, go to shape dynamics, put the size jitter to 100 and the angle jitter to 100. And then I want to maybe add just a little bit of roundness jitter as well, like 15% should be fine. I'm going to go to scattering and add a little bit of scattering and put the count to, let's say, 5. Put on both axes. You can kind of see here a preview of what the brush is going to do. Next, I want to go to transfer, and I want 100% opacity jitter and also some flow jitter. Maybe set that to 90%. And then with the brush selected, I want my brush to be at about 30% opacity, and you can change that here. You can also change that, by the way, when you're on the brush tool by just hitting a number. So 4 for 40%, 3. And if I hit two numbers quickly, like 45, I'm going to get 45. Okay, so let's hit 3 for 30%. And while I'm on my brush tool, if I hold down the Option key, I'm going to switch to the eyedropper, and then I can select what my foreground color is, which is the color I'm going to be painting with. So essentially what I'm going to do here, and I'll kind of fast forward through this, but I'm going to be selecting colors and then painting the area just so that the background looks more broken up and not like it was created with some gradients, but instead looks kind of like a smoky background being lit by various lights. I'm also adding just more of a kind of a strong blue color in here, almost like a reflex blue, but I want the opacity on that to be quite a bit lighter, maybe 10%. To adjust the diameter of my brush, I'm holding down Control and Option. I just want some splotches of that more blue color down here, maybe a little bit up here as well. And there you go, I'm pretty happy with that. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is go to File, Open. And you can see this photo here in the assets. I'm going to open that. And we're going to get rid of this guy. So let's kind of zoom in here. I'm going to select the B for the brush tool, and then right mouse click and just select one of these general brushes, make it quite a bit smaller there. And then hold down Option, select this white color, put the opacity on 100, and just paint him out. And then I want to select this rock, and we're going to go to the quick selection tool. That's going to be fastest here, and just paint the white area around the rock like so. And then we're going to go to Select, Inverse, and then go onto one of our selection tools and click on the Select and Mask here. I'm going to turn on the Smart Radius, put that up to about 4 pixels, and then hit OK. And now what we can do is do Command J, and that's going to make a new layer from our selection there that just has the rock. I don't care so much about having this background here. We're not going to use it, so I don't really care about it that much. But just for the sake of transforming, what I might do is just cut out the part that I will use. So here, and let's do Command J again there. We can throw this away and then convert this to a smart object. So there you go. That's what we're going to use as the rock that the lamp is sitting on. And I'm going to drag this into here and turn on my guides again. And essentially where I want this is I want the top of it to be on this second gradient here, just a bit above it. So right about there. And I want it to be about in the middle here and in the middle here, side to side. So we're going to do Command T for transform and start making this the size that we want it. So that's about where I want that side. That's about where I want that side. And I'm going to stretch this down. So that's about where I want this and this side to be. So what I want to do now is just push the center of it down. So I'm going to turn on the warp, which is right here. And with the warp turned on, I can actually just drag this part down. So this is the part that I want down. I actually want this to have a little bit more of a flat top feel. So I'm going to drag up this side here. Drag this down even a little more. Maybe drag this side up again. So I'm just kind of using this to form it. I also may want it to go in a little bit here. And also have a little bit more of a defined jutting out shape here. And I think that looks pretty good. So let's hit the check mark, or we can double click. And let's call this rock. And the next thing I want to do is add a gradient to this. We're going to go make our foreground color black, make our gradient linear, and just kind of gradient up black from the bottom, and then hold down Option so that this clips to there. I'm also going to make this part darker, so just gradient in from there, and maybe this side as well. I can turn this so that it's not 100%, so we're still getting a little bit of detail coming through there. So maybe 92 is enough. And then what I want to do is add, to color this, I'm going to add a gradient map. And the gradient map, I want to go, well, first I want it to clip to this. So I can either do that here, but I can also do it here. So by pushing this, you're clipping it to the layer below. So that's a nice little handy trick there. You can use this. And then what we're going to do here is click on our gradient and select kind of this dark blue color here. And why is it not selecting our background there? Yeah, so this is a problem I've run into, and it's one of these things that Photoshop should really fix. But what it's doing is, because the mask is selected, it's only selecting colors from the mask, which is kind of stupid. So to change that, click on the gradient there, and you can see what's selected through this kind of white outer frame. So select that, then go in here, and now you'll be able to select colors from your image. All right, next we're going to do one in the middle. Use more of this purpley violet color. I have to go brighter. And maybe, actually that looks quite good. Let's hit OK. I don't want this to be at 100%, so I'm just going to take it down a little bit. About 90, I think, will do the trick. And then I do want the highlights to just be a little bit stronger there. So what I'm going to do is go under here and add a curve and just bring up the bottom of the curve there, like so. Okay, so that pretty much gives us the rock. All right, the next thing we're going to do is pull in the lamp. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and select the lamp camera raw file here, hit place. This has already been set to how I want it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. But in case when you pull it in, it isn't set properly, just go ahead and pause here and replicate these settings here. All right, let's hit OK. And let's place this. I want it to be smaller. So I want the handle to kind of go to this guide here. And that's about right for now. And the next thing I want to do is cut it out. Now, in theory, this should be a perfect image to use an automatic cutout tool with. However, in attempting to do that, you'll notice, for example, here, the reflection in the background is so similar in color that it actually may not get the effect that you want. I've also found with when something like this is kind of the center of your image, it's best to just cut it out by hand. Take those extra few minutes to do the work manually and get the result that you want. So in this case, what we're going to use is the pen tool. And the reason I like using the pen tool is because unlike the lasso, I can make curves with it, like so. And also I can go and correct it after the fact, which you cannot do with a lasso. So that's why I use the pen tool. I have quite a few videos covering the pen tool in detail. So I won't cover it all again here, but essentially what you're doing is clicking and dragging to make points, and then clicking and dragging again. And what we're going to do is go around the entire object. For this, I am going to turn off the guides because you'll notice as I'm working here, my mouse, if I get close to any of these, my mouse wants to snap onto the guides, and that isn't helping. So I'm going to do Command semicolon, and let's do Command Z, kind of get us back to starting. And for this, I am going to zoom in, and essentially we're going to cut out the lamp. So I'll fast forward through this. One thing to watch out for when you're doing a path-based selection like this is don't zoom in too far, because eventually you'll be so zoomed in that you're losing the forest for the trees. I do have a tendency of doing that, and I kind of have to check myself often to make sure I haven't zoomed in too far. I probably have already, but almost done. So, especially on large curved areas like this, the more you can do it with just one or two anchor points, the better off you are, because you'll have a nicer curve. Okay, once you've done that, select both your paths using the direct or path selection tool. The shortcut for that is A. Make sure that this right here, because you have two paths, make sure that this is on exclude overlapping shapes. And then right mouse click and hit create vector mask. There you can see we now have it cut out. And what I want to do is right mouse click on this and go to convert to smart object, so that's just one layer here. I'm going to turn my guides back on, and I want to skew this so that it's straight. So as you can see right now, it's not. The tip of it is further to the right than the base. And I'm also going to put this under the rock so I can see. I want the bottom of it to be showing, so right about there, so that it looks like it's sitting on top of the rock there. And then I'm going to do Command T for transform, hold down the Command key, and then drag this to the left here, like so. And also stretch this, place the anchor point there, so that's where it's stretching from, about there, and maybe make it not quite as tall. It's a little bit more the shape of the original. Right about there is good. Let's hit OK. And the next thing I want to do is go to Image, Adjustments, Selective Color. I'm going to make this a little bit more gold as opposed to copperish. So in the reds, I'm going to pull out some of the magenta, add some yellow, And in the yellow, pull out some magenta. So I don't want it to go greenish, so I'm going to pull out some of that cyan as well. Just get more of a goldy color there. Let's hit OK. And next, I'm going to add the glow around it. To do that, I'm going to hold down Command, and you can see my icon now has a selection tool around it, and that's going to select the transparency of this layer. I'm going to make a layer below it called Lamp Glow and fill it with white. So if we switch, so our foreground color is white, I can hit Option, Delete, and that will fill my selection with white. I'm going to hit Command D for deselect, and then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And I want this to be blurred almost to the point where it has like no shape. So there it has none. So let's just go round that up to 200. Oh, hang on. Before I do that, I need to copy the layer. So to do that, I can either drag it down here or hit Command J. And then let's go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, 200 is good. And then select the original layer, Command J to make another copy. And I'm going to hold down Control, Option, Command F. That's going to bring up my last filter. And I'm going to change the radius from 200 to 100. I'm essentially just going to keep cutting it in half. So 100, make another copy again, 50, another copy again, 25, another copy again, 18, another copy, 9, 4, and 2. All right, now I'm going to take everything but the 2 and the 4, actually everything but the last 3. So from this all the way to the 100, and I'm going to do Command E so that they're all one layer. I'm going to put those on screen, and then do Command U, or Image Adjustments, Hue Saturation, Command U. And what I want to do here is click on the Colorize down here, put the saturation to 100, and you can see the bottom bar here shows you the color. So I'm going to drag this to get kind of a nice purpley color that matches this, and then start making this darker to about there. Looks nice. And then I'm going to add a mask to this. Go on my gradient tool, make sure I'm on foreground to transparent linear. Just make a gradient that kind of cuts off the top of that heavy glow. It's right about there. And then for these, which is 8, 4, and 2, I'm going to also collapse them. You can see what that glow is doing. I don't want it to be as present, so I'm going to add a mask. And in the mask, I'm going to go to Filter, Render, Clouds. And what that's going to do is it's going to add a noise cloud pattern that will make the glow appear and then disappear kind of around this. And if there's a part that I want stronger, so right down here, I can go on my brush tool, make sure I'm selected, have the mask selected, and I'm on white. Then just pick a really soft brush like this one here, and then just paint those areas where I want that glow to be stronger, like so. I'm actually also going to do that on this, but for this I want to use my smoky brush. So what I'm going to do is select here, and these are the previous brushes that you've used. So I can click on that, and that should give me the brush I was using previously. We can just verify that here. Yes. And also, just for safety, let's go ahead and save this brush. we want to include the tool settings, and we'll call this our smoke brush. That way, if we want to go back to it after it's kind of run out of history, there we always have it. And make sure I have my mask selected. I'm just going to paint just around there. And you can see, so it's adding that back in, but with a little bit of a smoky effect there. Can also hit X to make it black, and then just kind of paint it like so. All right, so that gives us the outer glow. Now I want an inside glow. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the guide so I can see this better. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to make a copy of this layer. So just drag that there. And I don't want this to be a smart object anymore, so I'm going to right mouse click and say rasterize layer. And then I'm going to do image adjustments, curves. And what I want to do is I'm going to drag the bottom of the curve, just kind of collapse this so we just have those highlights there. Hit OK. Put this on screen mode, and then go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. This is commonly referred to as an Orton effect or glow. And as you can see, we're getting a nice glow there. Let's hit OK. And then what I also want to do is do it one more time. And for this one, I'm going to rasterize the layer again. I want just the white highlights. So let's do Command M again. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to make the image black and white. So there you go. And then Command M, and just want those nice white highlights there. And let's put that on screen. That's pretty nice. I also want to, on this layer, I want to make the bottom of this darker and a little bluer. So right kind of where that ambient shadow of the rock would be. So let's go ahead and add a curve to this. Bring down the bottom and bring up the blue. So that's quite nice there. Maybe on this, rather than bring the bottom so sharply, what we might do is kind of do it a little bit like that. And then on this mask, I'm going to add a gradient and just kind of go so that it's just affecting the bottom there like that. You can see the mask, it's white gradienting up to a black there. Next, I want to add the inside glow. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Command, kind of what we did at the bottom where we made a new layer and just filled it with a selection. But in this case, I want to fill it with black. So Option Delete, we have just this black layer. And the reason for that is I can put this on screen, and the light effects, which I'm going to do a inner shadow in this case. And this already has the settings, but you want it minus 90 degrees, so it's coming in from the bottom. 21 pixel distance. You want kind of a violety blue color there, and 42 size. And you can see what that's doing is it's adding a glow coming in from the bottom. And then we're going to turn on a second one, and the second one is also screen blending mode coming in from the bottom, so minus 90 here. This one has a shorter distance, and that's nice. So around 30. So that's coming in from the bottom. And then finally, we want to go to the blending options for the whole layer here. And we want to turn this on. Layer mask hides effects. And the reason for that is I'm going to put a layer mask on there, and with a soft black brush, which we'll select here, I'm going to paint away where I don't want it. So let's make sure I have a black brush here. You can also see I have some of that white highlight from this one down here that I don't really want there. And I think that's pretty nice. I'm noticing now also that my rock is a little bit too monochromatic, meaning it doesn't have enough color. So I'm going to take my gradient, and with a gradient tool on this gradient map, I'm just going to kind of go in from the top here and get a little bit of the color back in there like that. And maybe in here. There you go. All right, so that finishes our lamp. And the next thing we're going to do is add the stars. So let's go to behind the lamp here and go File, Place Embedded. And I'm going to take this file, the astronomy one, place that. And I'm going to rotate this. I want this clump of stars. Actually, let's not rotate it, because otherwise it's going to make our star shape skewed. But I want this clump of stars to be down here. And let's transform this bigger. I want this star to be right about there. So right about there. Let's hit the check mark. And next, I'm going to do Command M for our curve. Take the bottom of the curve down. And then put this on screen. And then I'm going to add a mask to it. And when I add the mask, I'm actually going to hold down Option. And what that's going to do is it's going to put a black mask on it. And now using a brush with white as my foreground color, I'm going to paint in the areas that I want, as opposed to having to paint out everything else. And I can always hit, the nice thing about having black and white here on a mask, just hit X to switch between black and white. So if you want to erase, go on black. If you want to paint in, go on white. And that's about what I want there. I'm going to make a copy of this layer, delete the layer mask, and I'm going to hold down Option, click on the eyeball so that I just see this. Kind of move this around. I'm looking for a spot that has a couple stars, but not much of this kind of galaxy stuff. So right about there is nice. What I can do is go in a circular marquee, make a circle around that, and then hit Q on the keyboard to go into Quick Mask. So there I can see my selection quite clearly. I can go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just soften this edge to about there. Hit Q again, and then do Command J. And then I can delete this. So now I have just that. Now, I shouldn't have done that. This is one of the issues with the eyeball tool, is there's no way of now, oh, look at that. They must have fixed it. Okay, so just hit it again. Okay, so now with this, I'm going to move this to here, and then hold down Option and drag it to here. I just want to add a little more of these nice stars around this. So that looks quite nice. Next, I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, pick the first one, Particles 200. And the settings are already set, but if you want to pause, take a look at them, make sure they match. Hit OK. And I'm going to transform this so that the bigger version of the dots are toward the bottom, like this. Let me make that a bit bigger. And put that on screen. And I'm going to do the trick again, option on the mask, and then just paint in the areas that I want here. Just kind of right around down here. And let's do, also I don't need this to be a smart object, and it's going to make our file unnecessarily large. So I'm going to go ahead and rasterize this. Same with this one, just rasterize the layer. Next, I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. I'm going to do Particles 207. Again, settings are already in place. Let's hit OK. Transform this so that the big dots are toward the bottom, smaller dots are toward the top. And let's put this on screen as well. And I'm going to add a mask here. Take the opacity down on my brush, and with a black brush, just kind of brush out the top. I want them to be visible, but not as strong. And File, Place Embed. Our last one here is Particles 246. And we got some smaller particles here. And let's flip horizontal. Let's put this on screen. And let's rasterize that. Option, click on the mask tool, go on a large brush, change it to white. I'm going to paint those in around here. Just kind of going up like that. So there you go. I have kind of the particles there. I do want a little bit of a plasma effect down here. So what I'm going to do is go File, Place Embedded. And you can see this is one of the light leaks from my light leak pack, which I'll include in the description for this video. I'll include a link to the whole pack. It's very cool for composites like this. So I just kind of want those light streaks down there. So we're going to put it there, put it on screen, and then do Command U for hue saturation. Kind of move that color toward a pinkish purplish color. So right around there, plus 80. Let's hit OK. Rasterize that. Add a mask and just get rid of these hard edges here. Good. And next, on top of everything, I'm going to do File, Place Embedded, and there is a file here called Alexander Andrews. Let's place this, and I want this one to be kind of like this. And let's put that on screen. I want this kind of plasma thing to be the bottom of the lamp here, like that. Let's maybe do Command T. I do like this star a lot, so just trying to get that kind of placed above the lamp, so about there. And let's rasterize this layer as well. I'm going to do Command M, bring down the darkness, and I want it to be a little more blue. So I'm going to go to my blue channel, pump that up a bit, and maybe take away some of the red. Like that. That looks really nice. Let's hit OK. And now what I'm going to do is hold down Command, click on the rock, and then hold down Option and the mask. So what that's going to do is it's going to cut the rock out so it's not going on top of the rock. I also do want to cut it out in front of the lamp, but I want it to be encroaching kind of the underside and so forth of it, which is why I put it on top. So let's click on any of the lamp layers here, holding down Command so that we have a selection. Then I'm going to hit Q and do Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. You can click here to see how much it's blurring. That's too much. I kind of want it to encroach like that, so that looks quite good. And then what we can also do is do Command M. So now we're doing a curve on our mask. And I'm going to encroach the bottom of it. So you can kind of see this edge. It is hard to see, but this edge is becoming less transparent than the mask there. So let's hit OK, hit Q, and you can see now we have this encroaching in. And if I go onto my mask and do Option Delete with my foreground color black, it's going to delete it, but it'll still be encroaching on the edges. And I do want it even more here, so I'm going to go on the mask and with a brush, soft brush, just kind of paint a little bit more of it coming into the bottom here. And that's pretty nice. There's too much stars up here, so I'm going to go on the gradient tool, the black gradient, and just make those come in. And that's pretty nice. I do want a few stronger ones in here. So what I may do is copy this layer, Command J, delete this layer mask, and just move in some of the stars from here, like so. And then Option to put a mask on the whole thing, and then just with a white soft brush paint in a few of those here. And let's do Command 0. So I'm pretty happy with that. All right, the next thing we're going to do is add the smoke here. And to do that, I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to call this Smoke Reference. We're going to go to Paths. I want to change the name of the work path so that it's saved. We'll call this Lamp. It's just a good practice. Always save your work path, especially if you took some time to do it. And then we're going to go to our pen tool and draw what we want our smoke to look like in broad strokes. Oops. And then I can go A for the direct selection tool and just adjust this as needed. And I'm pretty happy with that. So now I want the path selected, and I'm going to go to Filter and go to Render Flame. And here you can see, now I've already made the settings for this, but I'll quickly walk you through them. So first off, make sure your flame type is one flame along the path. Okay, and you can set your width to 95. This you can adjust depending on the look that you want or the look that you're getting. I'd say around 100 is where you want it. You can also change the flame color here to just a kind of a white color or a gray color. And then go to advanced, and here you want your turbulence to be around 18. Adjusting this will adjust kind of the distance between things. The jag is how jagged it is. Again, that's going to dictate more how many of these there are than anything else. The opacity, obviously adjust the opacity, and then the flame line's complexity. This you want to keep pretty low, although you can play with it to see what other effects you get. But I would suggest keeping this pretty low. And then the bottom alignment. This isn't so relevant because you're doing it along one path, but you can play with it to see what other effects you can get. You can also try these. That's normal, violent, and flat. Flat gives you the nicest effect there. And you can also play with these. I put it on oval because I kind of want the smoke to get wider in the middle. So if we put that on oval, you can see. And then arrangement is almost like a seed generator in that you can adjust this to get any kind of different looks. So, you know, you can play with this depending on your path. The one I had, I was kind of happy with. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. So let's hit OK. And that's going to give us just a kind of a starting point for our smoke, because most of the smoke we're going to actually create by using other smoke images. So let's take the opacity down on this just so that it's there as a reference. And we're going to do File, Open. And the first one we're going to use is the one called Lenka. And there's two Lenka files. That's 13 and a 15. I'm going to use the 13 one first, the one that ends in 13. I'm going to go in my lasso tool. Don't want any feather on this right now. And I want to select this part all the way up through to there. Like so. So that part of the smoke, Command C, and close that, and Command V. And basically this is going to be our starting of our smoke and the first curve. So let's do Command T, flip this horizontal. Actually, put it kind of in its starting place there, like that. And then I'm going to use the warp, and we're going to have to warp this a lot. So just prepare yourself for that. And I hit warp. I'm going to pull the bottom of the warp down. And I did try the puppet warp for this because I thought, hey, maybe that would be easier. It just didn't give the nice curved results that this gave, which is why I went to this method. Obviously, if you find a better method of doing this smoke, you can let me know in the comments. There you go. Let's put this on screen. And then I'm going to go to File, Open, and open the second Lenka image, which is the one that ends in 15. Take this right through to there. Command C, Command V. Let's transform this. Command T. And this is going to be where it kind of connects with this one here at the bottom there. And then I'm going to do Command T. And the reason I'm doing it twice is because if I start to warp it from there, I'm not going to have as easy as a time as I do from here. So just commit the first transform and then start another one before you start doing this warp. That looks pretty nice. Let's put that on screen. And I'm going to do a curve on it just to get rid of that little edge that's showing. So maybe make it a bit brighter while we're at it. Also going to do that with this one, Command M. Just make sure none of the edge is showing. Make it a little bit brighter. All right, then the last one, if we go to File, Open, you're going to see a file called Paul Wong. Let's open that. And we're going to take kind of the whole top section all the way through to right about there. Command C, Command V, and let's do Command T, flip horizontal. And we want this part here to be the joining point. So about like that. Kind of like the overlap right there. And that going toward the top there. That looks pretty nice. So, okay. And on this, we're going to put it on screen. Then do Command M, just see if we can get rid of that edge. Make it a little brighter. And then I'm going to add a mask to it and just soften out the edge there. And then do the same on this one. Just make it look like they kind of meet organically about there. That looks pretty nice. So there you go. We now have this kind of nice smoke. I'm going to take these 3 layers that make up the smoke and collapse them, Command E, and then put those on screen. And then I can also turn down my smoke reference. I may keep it just as a tinge in the background. So maybe like just 4%, just lighting up that area right there. And then I'm going to make a copy of my smoke. So let's call this one Smoke. And let's call this Blurred Smoke. And for this, I'm going to go to Filter, Blur Gallery, Path Blur. I'm going to start the path here. And just kind of make it follow the shape here of the smoke. And that's good. Oops. Set escape to end it. I can actually hit delete. Oops. Did not want to do that. Okay, so there you go. We're going to turn off center blurred so that it's only blurring one way. And then kind of increase our blur speed here. Let me take the end. Try to adjust this so that as it's coming out, it's just going in one direction there. And let's hit OK. So it just kind of makes the whole thing stronger and gives it a little more direction. And then what I want to do is make the color of this a little more cyan and magenta. So to do that, I'm going to go Command M, go to my green. The opposite of green is magenta. Pull down the bottom of, or the top of that, and you can see that's adding magenta. And then red, the opposite of that is cyan. So pull that down there. And we can also add some blue. And maybe add some red to the highlights there just to make it a little more magenta. And let's give this the same. So if I hold down Option Command M, what that's going to do is, Command M is the shortcut for curves. If I hold down Option, it'll give it the same curve that I just gave the other one. So that may be a bit too strong. So maybe what we'll do is on this one, Actually, on this one, what I might do is just blur out some areas where it's a little too strong. And then give it mainly just the magenta treatment, like so. Yeah, I like that. Okay, good. All right, and then I'm going to put both of these in a group, call it smoke. Put a mask on the whole group. Just make sure it's not coming in the front there. And then also kind of make it taper off like so, because we're going to put some text there. All right, there you go. Now we have the smoke. All right, so the last thing we're going to do before adding the titling is adding some texture. Before I do that, I'm just going to clean up the file a tiny bit. So we'll put those in there. Let's take all these layers, put them in a group called foreground rock. And we can take all these layers, then make up the lamp, put them in a group called lamp. Don't need this lamp glow anymore. And we can take all these layers and call them stardust. And we can collapse the background into one layer. All right, there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my lamp. First, I want to add a little bit of texture to the lamp. So let's go above the lamp. I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and take this file called Darker Grunge, and just place that kind of right about there. And I'm going to put this on Soft Light, and then merge it down like so. Now it's adding too much darkness to it, so what I'm going to do is do Command M and just bring up the bottom so that it's mainly applying the lightness to the, the lightness to the image rather than the darkness. So you can see it's adding texture here at the bottom, but it's not affecting the lightness or darkness so much. Next, I'm going to go to the top here, go File, Place Embedded, and there's a file here called Painted Texture. I'm going to take this, rotate it, make it fill the image. Let's rasterize this. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. And I'm going to raise the yellow and the red just a bit so that we have kind of a more neutral color in the middle here. And let's put this on Soft Light. Again, it's affecting the lightness darkness too much, so let's take the opacity down. Just want a little bit of texture being added. So it looks like around 46% is nice. And again, we can also do a curve on it and just bring up the bottom so that it's not affecting the dark so much. Good. Next, we're going to do File, Place Embedded again. We're going to do the file called Lomo. And just stretch that to fit. And let's put this on Soft Light as well. And take the opacity down to about 40%. And then above this layer here, I'm going to add a layer called Additional Paint. Let's turn these off temporarily. And what I'm going to do is just paint a little more around here so that we don't have this kind of sharp contrast here. I want it to look more like this is within smoke. So let's go on our brush tool and let's go to the brush we saved, this one here, the smoky brush. And similar to what we did with the background, I'm just going to select some colors, start painting a little bit. Let's take the opacity down. Good, so I like that. I'm also going to go just under here, under all of our glows, and with a white brush and a much smaller brush, just add a little more glow, kind of right at the base here. And also on top of the lamp, I want to add just a little bit more of color kind of in here. And these are all kind of steps that you don't have to do. I'm more just like, I kind of like the more roughed up painted look, especially for this kind of a poster. Just gives the whole thing a little bit more of a artistic look as opposed to a photographic look. I'm quite happy with that. I do like the effect down here. And I think now with those texture layers, we get a really nice painted look. All right, the last thing we're going to do is add some titles. So for that, I am going to turn the guides back on. I'm going to make a new folder here called titling. I'm going to go default my colors, which is D on the keyboard, and then hit X, so my foreground color is white. I'm going to go on the type tool, and your default type is probably going to be Arial. So the first thing we're going to do is up here. I'm going to add some type that says a drink. And we're going to use the font called Walt Disney Script, and I'll include a link on where you can download that. It's a free font. And this is going to be, let's see, 128. Let's make this smaller. Probably around there is good. And next, I'm going to type down here, choose whiskey. And we're going to change this to Jungie Regular. And this is a Google font. Again, I'll include a link to it. I'm going to make this about, let's make it 13 point. And you'll notice that it's 113% wider. I actually do want that, although I don't want it on the drink font. So we'll fix that in a second. And let's add about, I'd say 140 on the tracking. And maybe take it down to 12 point. So there, and I want this to be baselined on this first guide there, like that. And I'm just going to go back on this and set it to 100. Good. All right, and then for the last one, down here, we're going to type May. And I'm going to change this to Mr. Defoe. This is another Google font. And if I zoom in here, I'm just going to center it up between these two guides. Maybe actually make it a little bit closer to the top there. And then I'm going to do Command T, hold down the Command and Shift, and then skew this so it's not quite so straight, or not quite so slanted. So about there. And let's do Command 0 to see everything. And on the titling, I want to add a gradient. So let's go to here, Gradient Overlay. And this is actually already set with the colors I want, but go ahead and show you the first color is F2BE5A. Second color here is FDE6A2. And now what I want to do is I want to copy this effect to these two layers. So to do that, I'm going to hold down Option and Command. Make sure you grab Effects and not Gradient Overlay. And just drag this to there and drag it to there. And voila, you've now copied it. If we turn off our guides. So there you have it. That's how you recreate the Aladdin teaser poster in Photoshop. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, leave a like, share this video. And if you have any questions, comments, or want to know certain things about the techniques I covered here, or if there's another poster image that you want to know how to recreate, leave a comment. I do look at them all and I do try to respond to all of them. And I really enjoy the interaction. It helps me continue making this kind of content for you. Lastly, I did mention in this video that I have a watercolor set, and I also mentioned a light leak set. I will include a link to those in the description of this video. I do suggest taking a peek at those because they're really good assets if you're doing compositing in Photoshop. And if you're very new to compositing in Photoshop, I really suggest that you take a look at my Photoshop starter kit. It has a whole bunch of assets that you'll definitely find yourself using when you start in compositing, including some flares, a few sample light leaks, light rays, some of my watercolor brushes, some cloud layers, sky images, as well as grunge maps. And it also has a bunch of camera raw images that you can use as kind of a starting point and also practice files for doing your own composites. I do ask for your email address. That's so that you can get newsletters on my premium courses, on my premium asset packs, and on free tutorials like this one. I do not share your email address with anyone else. But that's the little bit of payment, not actual payment, that I do ask in return for that starter kit. So, full transparency, I will ask for your email address. Otherwise, I will see you next week. Here's some other tutorials to check out in the meantime.